On the show today, we have Whitney Faires, and here is why she is awesome. She's an internationally recognized executive coach, keynote speaker, and a leadership expert. She's the founder of Whitney Faires Coaching, Speaking, and Development, which empowers high-achieving, impact-driven leaders to reach new levels of success and unlock hidden potential. And just not for nothing, she set 4 NCAA Division I records in volleyball at the University of Virginia back in the day, and I think that drive is still pushing her forward. Just saying. Hello, Whitney.
Hello. Thanks for having me today.
Thanks for being here. Super interesting topic because adversity. I was going to say the word, I was going to use the F word. I was going to say failure, but I think we're going to dance around and dig into that a little bit too. Super interesting for leaders, whether they're allowed to be sometimes or not. But before we do, I have to ask you the question I ask all of my guests, Whitney, which is, what is your best or worst employee experience?
Yeah, so I could give you my worst, but I actually think my best is so much more fun. So when I made the transition from sales to commercial operations, I was launching this new function, and I had a leader who was completely out of the ordinary compared to leaders I had previously had. His name was Nick Santor. I can tell it because it's my best, right? I can say his name. But one thing that I noticed very early on, even in the interview process, and I thought, oh, he's just really taking time to get to know me because he's trying to compel me to take this job. But what I noticed consistently was that when I would call him, whether it was my one-on-one call or because I had a quick question, he would say, hey, well, first, before we jump in, like, how are you doing? And he'd ask me really personal questions in a good way. How's your son doing? I know he's an infant. Did you get any sleep? And he would really invest in just talking to me about me, how I was doing, how my family was doing, what's going on, how's my stress level at the end of the quarter. And I thought this eventually will kind of taper off, but it didn't. He made such an effort to invest in who I was as a person. And what that did was it built tremendous trust with me. And it made me realize he actually cared. It wasn't just about what I produced at work, although he had high expectations. It was about who I was as a whole person. And I think so often in the business world or whatever profession you're in, that scene is soft. But it actually had such an opposite effect where it was actually, I believe it was genuine, but it was a multiplier for what I was willing to do for him, the organization, because there was so much that was poured into me. And the other thing that I noticed that made it such a great experience is he was a very empowering leader. And what I mean by that is he encouraged us to take risks and to make our own decisions. Similarly, when I call up on the phone, I'd say, I've got this problem. Here's what I'm thinking. Here's how I want to solve it. He'd say, okay. Yeah, I mean, have you thought through this? Have you thought through that? Okay, go do it. And I'm like, when you say that, there's a better way that you would do it. So you tell me how you would do it. He's, I'm not going to tell you that. And he's, because I want you to do it your way. If it was going to fail, if it was going to create real risk to the organization or the people, I would tell you, but I want you to do it your way. And forever it drove me crazy. But what I realized over time was he wanted us to start gaining confidence in our decision making, to be able to learn from maybe a solution that was less than optimal, but still got us there. And he wanted us to know that he was open-minded, that he didn't know it all. It wasn't about doing it his way. And he is a leader that has developed such a brand of connecting with people, of driving exceptional results as someone that people would run through walls for. And it was because how he showed up for us. Right. And his ability to give us that space to be us, to learn, to grow in the job. In I think his superpower is having trust that it's all going to work out. Like he knows it can't be messed up so bad he can't fix it. So he's going to give us that runway to go.
I think I feel like it's two pieces of caring, right? The first piece you talked about, and I really wrote this down, like, he actually cared. Here's what scares the crap out of me, Whitney, is that stood out to you. Like that it was an anomaly based on experience with other quote unquote leaders, bosses, managers, where that's not the norm, which you would think would be. But for that to stand out, for you to be a story that was immediately off the top of your head, that is like, we have a problem with leadership. I believe we have a huge problem with leadership, but the solution is leadership. And that is such a great example of that. I have my own experience with managing a team. I had the same team for 12 years, and the retention was probably the highest in the whole organization. But you hit on something that was so important, was getting employees to care, failure or win, but having that skin in the game actually makes them want to work harder. It motivates them because they feel like they're a part of a system instead of a cog in a wheel to somebody else's means to an end. And that whole
Yeah.
relationship. Yeah. What did you take? What's one thing you took to yourself in your own relationships moving forward from that?
Well, I think definitely that you need to give people the space to be
Mm,
themselves and the opportunity to fail. Like, it's going to be okay. I'm a high achieving perfectionist. I don't even call myself a recovering perfectionist because let's be honest, you never recover, you manage it, right? I mean, I wish I was. I wish it didn't exist, but it does. It's who I am. You always, it's like it should be 100%. It should be the best possible result you can give. And you can't hold that expectation of people. It's not realistic. And not everybody wants it that way. And so it was real confidence for me that you can give people space to do it their way, to be themselves, and it's all going to be okay. If I'm a good enough leader, I will make sure it's all okay. I will be there to support them. You said one thing about how it's kind of sad that like I highlighted that he actually cared. I think that, and I've made this mistake, I'll be honest, as a young leader, it's the business,
mhm.
the goal. And every time you're on the phone with your people, you're in front of your people, it's mostly all business, like 90%. And I'm not saying none of those things matter, but what I am saying is leadership is actually not that hard. It's we
Yeah.
miss the ability to just be humans, and when we are humans that connect and are real with people and listen to people, that's where leadership becomes much easier because we create a dynamic where it's open and people are willing to share and come to us and tell us the hard things versus we're just driving into the business all the time and they feel like it's just all about the numbers and then the action items. So that's one of my learnings in my experience as a leader.
I hear you. It's funny you say that because I think one of the pivots for me, 8 years ago, to go more down the employee path was that I had talked to all these leaders and business managers at these huge conference, and I brought up employees and the glazed eyes you would not believe, because I mentioned customer equals money. Customers quick, it's easy. The employees are a means to an end to that customer that we have to love and covet and make money from. But the minute you talk about employees and retention and humanizing them, it's all about, oh, well, how do I make money for that? Is that a cost center? Is that a, like, it was, again, I think the world has shifted a lot since then. I mean, COVID actually made us more human and more aware of these things. But to your point, that was the way it was for a very long time, was bottom line, bottom line, bottom line. I'm like, but if you treat people like human beings, that bottom line will actually be a lot better by the time you get to it. Speaking, and you've also given me a beautiful segue into what we're talking about today. It was like failure. I'm like, yes, that's what we're talking about. So, Whitney, let's kick it off by first. Again, I do this regularly on the show. Is defining what, singing from the same songbook here. How would you define adversity or setbacks when it comes to the workplace?
Yeah, I mean, adversity is any obstacle that pops up that derails, slows down, impedes the initial vision or plan that you had. Adversity can be really small. It can be just you're trying to get a hold of someone to move a project forward and they're not responding to you, or it could be really big. Hey, the budget's been cut. You now need to do it with half of the resources. So adversity is really anything that creates a speed bump on our pathway to achieving whatever it is that we want to achieve.
Are we getting into a semantics exercise? We start throwing other words in like challenge, obstacle. Are they different, or are we kind of talking about the same thing?
I mean, you could split hairs on it, and maybe they're different, but I think they're mostly the same. I try to simplify things. So any challenge, any obstacle, any of that slows you down, that makes you stop and go, oh, now what? It is how I would define adversity.
Is there, before we get into sort of how do we lead through it, I kind of need to understand too, is there a range to this? Because what one person might be adversity might not be to somebody else. Or, and I went down this where, and I hate when leadership does this, where they do exchange words and say it's the same thing. For example, somebody's drowning at work and they're like, that's just a setback. I'm like, no, they're drowning. That is not oh, it's a great opportunity to learn how to swim now. That's not what this is. But I've seen leaders throw words in to sort of like minimize it. So, how do you approach when people ask those questions?
I think anytime someone is struggling, when you gave the example of drowning, you immediately have to hop in and help, right? Because I mean, they're people and they're a most valuable resource. In my opinion, people are a most valuable resource. You can have the greatest product, service, technology, you name it. It's not going anywhere without your people. So to me, if somebody is struggling, then you immediately should step in and at a minimum check in and do some discovery on it. So I don't know if I answered your question. You mentioned though also, is there a range? Absolutely, there's a range. And here's what's tough for leaders. That range is going to be dependent on each person.
Mm,
So it doesn't matter what I think about, oh, this is just a small little setback. What matters is if I am leading my people or I'm working with a business partner, whoever it is how does it feel to them? Because if we are guiding based on how we perceive it, that's a miss, right? It's
right.
how it feels to them, how big it is to them, what they do from there. So it reminds us that we have to constantly be seeking to really understand, and we have to truly listen without judgment about their perception of the adversity or the setback.
Yeah, I love that you talked about it where it's a personal thing. So drowning, we almost have to address that at a mental health human level first before we can go, okay, well, obviously now we've addressed this. Where can we now look at as a setback or adversity or a challenge? But we can't even get to there if mental health wise they're drowning, they can't handle it, they are in a, and these could be from external pressures too. This might have
Sure.
nothing to do with happening in the workplace. It could be things that are happening externally, but if we're not leading and understanding that situation, we're not helping.
Yeah. One of the principles I live by as as a leader, but also as a person, but I
Mm,
really it came to me first in the business world is the principle is I assume best intent.
mhm,
And in the reason why is I can look at someone who's quote unquote drowning and think, I don't know how that would be. I mean, they've got the resources. I feel like they don't have a lot on their plate. Like they're doing what the job description said. But I assume if I hired the right person, then there's a reason. There's something I don't know. So I'm going to assume that they're doing their best and they're really struggling and I'm going to try to find out why and how I help. Because at the end of the day, it's not about being right or wrong. It's about the person and what I don't know and how I get them on a path where they're in a good spot. So assuming best intent is just so helpful because even when it's something small, like this person missed a deadline and it's not really significant, but it just irritates me as a leader. I asked myself, okay, I'm sure they wanted to hit the deadline.
mhm.
So what is it that got in their way versus me being frustrated and emotional about it and shooting off an email that says, hey, why is this not done? Assuming best intent helps me decompress that emotion and actually come from a place of curiosity.
And living in a world of assumption is horrible as a leader because again curiosity is absolutely cure. So what are other misconceptions that leaders may be having when it comes to adversity in the workplace or setbacks?
Yeah, I think one of the misconceptions is people will figure it out. Like
Uh,
they came to me, they told me, even when they say, I got this, I know the solution, I'm gonna figure it out. I just want to give you a heads up. I don't think you ever assume that they do. I think that's an opportunity to say, great, like let me hear what you're thinking. And it's always an opportunity for coaching. If they are really proficient, high achieving employee, maybe they just say tell you their solution and you're like, sounds great. I think you have a great plan, or maybe watch out for this. So I think it's not just letting them run with it because you never know, especially when They fear that this could impact their brand or their performance at work. Are they just trying to get you away so they can go figure it out? And you don't want them to do that. You want them to be able to talk to you about it. I think that's one of the big ones. I think the other thing is making sure that they've really thought comprehensively about the impact.
Hmm.
So I always think that there's different levels of thinking as it relates to problem. There's like the micro level, like how does this affect me and my team or the immediate project we're working on. Then there's macro level, the organization, the broader people, our customers, and especially our younger professionals, they aren't going to have macro level thinking. So maybe they're not actually considering the true impact of the adversity. And it's our job to use that opportunity to teach them how to process that through maybe stepping up and leading through that solution.